Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. Welcome once again to the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen, coming to you guys a day removed from AEW Dynamite live in Pittsburgh. Great time, fun show. We'll get to everything, the nitty gritty. We'll get to all that later on. But first, as always, follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. You can go to my page and clearly see that I never was and never will be verified, as they are all taking the blue check marks away as we speak. But I'm still no check mark Juicy Steen. You can also go to Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. Check out some of my vintage wrestling t-shirts. I wore one. The shirt I wore to Dynamite is actually going to be the vintage wrestling pay-per-view recommendation this week, which I cannot wait to get to later on. Also, as always, juicysteen.podbean.com. iTunes, rate and review this podcast 5 stars if you could. That would be fantastic. Man, interesting week. AEW Live. Raw was just kind of there this week, but we did further some things. We are getting closer to Backlash in Puerto Rico, something really to look forward to there. We have, as I believe it happened during the recording last week, the change from King and Queen of the Ring to Night of Champions had people, had fans kind of at a loss. Not really being sure of what the future was going to hold for the King and Queen of the Ring, although I am pretty sure you could have the finals of both of those tournaments happen at Night of Champions and just count them as a championship being won. So we'll see about that. But yeah, let's just go through the week. For me personally, this is the Juice Box, so I guess I could talk about myself for a little bit. But released the podcast last Friday. What did I do Saturday night? You go to a little independent wrestling, of course. You support local independent wrestling, and this is not a normal independent wrestling company that I went to. This is a company that I used to frequent in 2013, 2014, 2015-ish. It's called RWA, the Renegade Wrestling Alliance. It's about as independent as you could get. It's really one guy's vision who kind of runs the whole thing, but he doesn't just run it. He's got, a whole bunch of people in his network. I think some are family, some are just friends, some are just, loyal people to him in his life. And they run this thing out of the West Newton Gymnasium. It's as indie as you're going to get, but I'm telling you this. They are putting up almost, 2 to 250 people each month, each show. And the shows are packed because it's a gymnasium. But here's my thing. Even though it is as indie could get, right? Even though they're running out of a gymnasium, which is really nothing to sneeze at. The WWE was running house shows out of gymnasiums in 94, 95, so really not too big a deal. But the crowd specifically at this type of show that I have witnessed over the course of the years that I've gone, and now seeing it in a different light now that I'm 30 and I'm just here to be entertained. It's almost as if the smaller the town, the smaller the show, the smaller the promotion, the more invested those fans are. And I don't mean this to be a knock on the company, but it's almost as if every show, every month, is treated as if it's WrestleMania. Because let's be real, where this company, where they base out of, it's not too big of a town. They don't get wrestling shows all that often, but they have a hometown wrestling promotion, and they're going to support it, and they do support it every single month. And I think it's badass that they are always, filling up that gym to the extent that they can, and they're as emotive, as into it, as excited to watch all this stuff happen and unfold. Long story long, I was there particularly for one of my friends in the wrestling world. He was a former co-host of mine at Chair Shot Reality, and I'm talking about one Rev Ronell Hunt, who was the defending and retaining RWA heavyweight champion. He wrestled a wrestler who has wrestled, I believe, in Ring of Honor a little bit. His name is J-Rock, and they had a steel cage match. So, just a little bit of a background to make sure I authenticate how this indie really runs is they had a 10-minute intermission, normal intermission, but then the second intermission was a 20-minute intermission purely to set up the steel cage. And I love that detail. Now, it might have been annoying to sit and wait for all of that, but I just love the authenticity of small indie shows where they got 6 different guys holding up each side of the cage, each wall. They're putting it up. Again, the owner, his name is Dr. Feelbad on screen. He was going around helping that as well. And meanwhile, I know this has turned into an RWA rant to start the show. I don't know how we got here, but hey, press is press. This is what happened over my week. The guy who runs the whole thing, again, his name is Dr. Feelbad, which I'm pretty sure is a play on Dr. Feelgood by Motley Crue, if I'm not mistaken. It's more my dad's bag, but he goes around during the show. He's matches are happening, and he's out there, not cheering on the good guys, but if there's a heel tactic, if there's a beat down or something, he gets in their face, or he's really, he's just kind of cycling and circling around the ring, kind of just getting a gauge of what's going on. But at the same time, he's going over to multiple groups of fans throughout the night with his huge notepad, making sure they are reserved seats for the next month's show. It is as grassroots as a wrestling promotion could possibly get in 2023, and I love it. It's not it's not AEW, it's not Ring of Honor, it's not PWG, but it is at its very basis a well-run indie promotion that has a dedicated fan base, and they do show every month. There's a reason it's been around for so long. People could say, oh, it's out of a gym and blah, blah, blah. But, hey, they get people to the show. They have money, And I just wanted to kind of go over what happened. Me seeing this match with Rev in the cage. He bled. J-Rock bled. Hell of a fight. And in the end, Ronell tapped out J-Rock. And it was a wild, wild scene, and I could not have been more excited and happy to see my friend perform in the ring in a cage match. It was really, really cool to see live. So I was really thrilled to do that on Saturday night. And then we'll get to Raw in a little bit. But there was another this is a small note, but Josh Eisenberg, another co-host of mine at Chair Shot Reality, him and I were involved as a team in a Seinfeld trivia night. And if you don't know me, I'm an incredibly loyal and dedicated Seinfeld fan. I've made it my life's work, it seems, to know as much as I can about the show, behind the scenes, on screen. It goes Pro Wrestling 1, Seinfeld 1A. So we went, and Josh Eisenberg, he's on the show for the WrestleMania predictions. I would say he is probably the person that knows about as much as I do in regards to Seinfeld. So it was thrilling to finally get a trivia night where we could kind of hash out and see how well we could do. We ended up, it was 5 rounds of 6 questions. We got all 30 questions correct. We were the only team to do that. And we got the bonus question correct, and we won the whole thing. We got a couple of boxes of Junior Mints and a gift card. Our team name, for anybody that cares, was from whenever Jerry and Kramer are bootlegging the movie Death Blow, and Jerry doesn't want to do it, and Kramer ends up being behind the camera, and then they, later on, they kind of watch the film to see how good the bootleg came out. And unfortunately, and I believe this is in the Little Kicks episode, one of the better episodes of season 8. They rewatch the footage that Kramer shot, and there's a real low point in the footage when all you hear is, "Aw man, I sat in gum." So that was our team name. "Aw man, I sat in gum," and we won. We aced it all. So hell of a couple of days with some chair shot reality compadres. It was fun. It was a fun couple of days seeing Ron in a cage, hanging out with Eisenberg, doing some Seinfeld trivia, and then the next night at Dynamite, got to hang out with him a little bit more. Had a great time at the show. So yeah, let's get into some wrestling stuff. Let's do some outside the ring first. It's been reported that Goldberg would really like to do a retirement tour thing, or more or less he's upset that WWE didn't do a a big deal, not sign off, but I don't know how else to put it, but a retirement tour, something akin to we only we know you only have so many dates left, so many matches left, but we want to kind of send you off into the sunset. But WWE not gonna do that, for anybody, let alone Goldberg, who was a WCW product first and foremost. So I doubt that WWE is gonna care to that extent. Which leads me into this next portion of what he should do outside of doing something independently, which I'm sure he will do. I'm sure he'll do some sort of tour that way. But if he wants to do something in ring, I look to AEW. And my thinking is not just AEW being, AEW should have Goldberg, they should sign him, they should have matches, and it'll be great. No. I think you have Goldberg get signed. I think it's a huge deal. It's a huge name. I think you can have him do a little bit of a thing with Jericho, maybe backstage, a little rehash of the WCW stuff. I think you have him squash a couple guys, and then I think you have him wrestle Wardlow, and you have Wardlow defeat him, and that might be it. AEW has done such a great job with veteran performers such as Arn Anderson, Dustin Rhodes, Tully Blanchard, Sting, among others, in regards to how they promote them, how they use them, how they utilize their talents inside and outside of the ring. And it's just really interesting that Goldberg has these issues, because to me, if you look at the Sting model for AEW, I think that's a way that Goldberg could be presented, and he could have a little bit of a run. It wouldn't be the biggest deal in the world, but I think he could, have a good run and it be all that it is, and Goldberg can ride off into the sunset. Now, I know he's already a WWE Hall of Famer. It were to seem that they're kind of done with the Goldberg experiment, especially with him almost killing Undertaker at the Super Showdown show. So, to me, I don't care if he would go to AEW. I think that'd be a fun little experiment. Like I said, he could do a couple matches if he wanted to and just mow some people down, and then get the match against Wardlow. You know, people will chant Wardlow like they did Goldberg. He's very similar in certain ways to Goldberg. He's got a lot of athleticism as for a big guy, but Goldberg never did a swanton off the top. So I mean, that's a little bit of a nuance to the Wardlow character that that Goldberg couldn't do. But yeah, I think it could be something. I really don't know if Tony Khan will do it, but I look at the future and I see All In happening at Wembley. And I'm trying to load that up, man. I'm trying to get Sting his retirement match. I'm trying to get CM Punk in a match against Kenny Omega maybe. I'm trying to get maybe Goldberg in a big high-profile match. And then I'm really just going to hash out the rest with my AEW talent paired with some of the big international stars. I mean, you got a lot of guys at your disposal to make Wembley a really crazy, fun show. So I think that's the move. I really do. Speaking of AEW, before we get into talking about Raw, and we're going to talk about Raw, we're going to talk about a quick note on some Money in the Bank stuff, and then of course we'll get into the AEW Dynamite experience, and as well, of course, we'll do the suggestion recommendation for Vintage Wrestling pay-per-view this week. So it'll be a tidy little show as we're coming in on 17 minutes here. Not too much going on this week. A lot of in-person wrestling, not a lot of note-taking, just a lot of fun. But yeah, let's get into this other little note here that's been rumored with all this CM Punk stuff happening recently of him, he's coming back, he's not coming back, different rosters, well, all these little things. It were to seem that right now there is a show coming out in June. Apparently it's going to be announced next month, in May, and it would be taking place on Saturday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. And it would be called AEW Collision. Now, the rumor going around is that if, and it seems more or less a when, CM Punk comes back to AEW, could be June 21st, could be later, could be sooner, that if CM Punk does come back, and when he does, the rumor going around is that this second show, which I don't know if it's some sort of additional show to Rampage. I don't know, again, the logistics of the rumor. Because it's a rumor, you don't know if is it going to be similar to Rampage? Is it going to be like Dynamite? Is it going to be like Dark? Is it going to be, live? Is it going to, same story? There's so many different nuances that we are not aware of because all we know is a report, right? But the rumor for Collision is that if it's all, it'll be a Saturday night, 2-night show, or 2-hour show on Saturday night on TNT probably. But that CM Punk would be the focal point or the top star of that show / brand. I just don't know what you want to refer to it as. But to me, it's again another two-pronged thing here. Does it makes sense for CM Punk to be, a focal point of a show when, the rumors are that it's not 100%, but there is, a segment of the roster that takes issue with CM Punk for, more obvious reasons than some others. But because of that, and some potential roster chaos or disarray, is that enough of a reason to purely split rosters for two separate shows just so that one guy doesn't interact with potentially other talent when the majority of these guys already travel certain spots? And I don't know where they're going to tape these shows. Like, there's so many things up in the air still with this, again, because it's a report. But for CM Punk to just be, the focal point of a show when it debuts, and it's supposed to be like it's going to be his show, or like he takes it to the next level. It's going to be focal point. This is my other part of it is, so if it is worth it to separate the rosters between them, how long will that go before someone has another issue, or someone has an issue with being on screen time? There's going to be, if this show happens on TV, there's going to be 5 hours of AEW. Now I know Raw and SmackDown are 5 hours and NXT gets you 6. But AEW having Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision would be 6 hours of potentially the same brand, again, unless they split their rosters. So there's a lot of moving pieces that would have to take place for me to understand this as a good idea. And the other part of this that I'd like to touch on is it's very reminiscent of when WCW had no choice. Eric Bischoff had no choice. Ted Turner wanted a second show, and it was WCW Thunder, and it was on Thursday nights, then Wednesday nights, then both. I think Tuesday nights even for a certain amount of time, which is a precursor to that SmackDown Live on Tuesdays, which was a fun era. Sidebar. But when that show debuted in January of 98, that was coming off the heels of not only Starrcade 97, where everything was botched, but Bret Hart coming into the company in November of 97 after the Montreal screw job, of course. It was really the idea and plan for... There were some things floated around as, once the NWO came in, that they would have their own show, and it could be, one of these is going to be an NWO rostered show, and the other is going to be just the WCW rostered show. But then when Bret Hart became available, it was made almost even more clear that Bret Hart would be that leader, that focal point, as I said before, that, the top star, the top draw, the reason you tune into Thunder, stuff like that. That's how he was kind of positioned outside of just being a special guest enforcer / referee for a match, when he easily could have just been in a match. And that's how he started 98. He was on Thunder. He began a feud with Ric Flair, and they had a match that sold out 98, which is a really underrated match. So I don't hate the idea, again, of Punk coming in and being, that guy. I just don't know how it translates into 2023. Hey, 25 years later since we've had Thunder on beginning on the air. So I don't know if a roster split is necessary. I don't know if a third show of another 2 hours is necessary. But if it's live, if it's got CM Punk, if it's got less drama behind the scenes, if it separates, if it does if it checks so many boxes, I think this could be a good idea. But man, they're getting close to the too many guys, too many talent, too much talent overall, too many women wrestlers that don't get on TV. I mean, if Collision happens, are we going to get any more women's matches outside of, the 9:30 slot every Dynamite to put the women in? Are we going to get better representation across the board with more hours? You would hope so. You would hope that all this talent would be able to be used like that. But again, I have my doubts. But I'm hopeful. I'm willing to give it a shot. When you don't really, I have no real rooting interest either way of a company doing, terrible, or anything. I just want both companies to be at such a level that they can bounce off of each other competitively and really the best shows going forward, equaling a good product for the fans of both. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a lot to just give CM Punk a whole show. Again, I don't know. This all could be rumors. I could be wrong. But to me, just be like, oh, that's good. Maybe that's where I have an issue is if Tony Khan believes that, oh, we have another 2-hour show like down the pike. Let's just put Punk on that show and he doesn't have to go on Dynamite or Rampage. Therefore, there won't be any backstage blow-ups. I don't think Tony Khan would ever think of something like that. I think that's an insane thought. But I also don't think that he would believe that would be sustainable. At what point does someone complain about Punk being the focal point of a show when he treated the company like garbage and the EVPs like garbage in literally directly sitting next to the man who pays the checks and owns the company and runs the company, So I'm hesitant. I'm interested, but I'm hesitant. I'm hopeful, but I'm hesitant. There's a lot, but more AEW, baby. I like the Saturday night show though. That part interests me, of course. Again, as a WCW fan, 6:05 on Saturday nights was always fun. WCW Saturday night, for a while it was the main show for WCW before Nitro aired in '95. But interesting times, more hours of TV, but don't know what to do with all these hours or any of these guys or any of this stuff. But yeah, let's transition now. That went a little further than I anticipated, but that's good stuff. Let's get into some Raw, and then we'll do some AEW mixed with vintage stuff. All that really happened on Raw of note, we had the Bloodline and Judgment Day kind of going face to face, trying to address each other's issues. However, the only thing I really took out of it was the Rhea Ripley getting in the face of Solo Sikoa, because Rhea Ripley is a badass and could single-handedly take out the entire Bloodline. Solo defeated Rey. It was a fun match, but that's really it. It seems like, and we are going to get it now, we're going to get Riddle, Sami Zayn, and KO versus the Bloodline at Backlash. However, the week prior to that on SmackDown, the Usos are going to go challenge KO and Sami for the tag titles, which a lot of people are thinking that this is going to be a title switch, which, my goodness, you had all the momentum up and, from Royal Rumble to the end of Royal Rumble to Elimination Chamber to WrestleMania Night 1. You're going to take the titles off these guys before that month even concludes? We'll see. I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. Bronson Reed, who finally seems to be progressing forward and not being in traffic, as I've given him that moniker the last couple of weeks, as he attacked Bobby Lashley, which I like. I really think we could get a good Hoss feud between Bronson Reed and Lashley. Hopefully that would maybe propel Bronson Reed further if they wanted to go that route. If Lashley's going to put him over, but I don't see why he wouldn't. We had Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville getting a shot at Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, which will be an interesting match as well. Hell of a match between Seth Rollins and The Miz. Not really surprised. Seth Rollins is one of the best workers in the business today. And The Miz and I mean this as a compliment. If you're a wrestling fan, if you're listening to the show, you understand what I'm saying. The Miz is one of the safest workers in WWE. He's almost never hurt. He never hurts other guys. I'm looking at you, Goldberg. And, he's been there for so long. He really has good chemistry with, just about everybody at this point. He's wrestled damn near everyone. And him and Rollins had a killer match. So props to The Miz. I think Miz is very underrated overall. I know a lot of people don't really like him, but I think he's a great ambassador for the company. I think he's a great worker. I think he's a fantastic promo. And I'd like to see him get another run in the WWE title down the line. But we'll see. We'll have to see where that takes him. But before it's all said and done, I'd like to see Miz as WWE champ once again. And then we had, of course, the Trish Stratus explanation for why she turned heel on Becky Lynch. She kind of said that, Becky was taking all this credit for the big salad. The women's revolution in WWE. And when in reality, Trish was like the first woman that, a lot of the fans just have to admit, without Trish, women's wrestling might not have been taken as seriously as it is now. The progression might not have started at all had she not, been something. But it is just wild to me that we are getting a Trish-Becky match in 2023. I cannot wait. But Trish looks fantastic for 2023. I think she's going to have a banger of a match with Becky, because if it's anything like her match with Charlotte at SummerSlam 2019, I think we got another barn burner on our hands. Speaking of barn burners, speaking of barns, speaking of farms, speaking of spring, and speaking of spring stampede, let's do the vintage wrestling pay-per-view recommendation. There is no title for this segment yet I will potentially come up with one if I think it's deemed worthy to get a name for the segment, because I say segment, yet it's really just me kind of going over one show. However, this is a two. I love the phrase two-pronged effect. But this vintage pay-per-view recommendation is an interesting one. As I stated earlier, this event was the shirt that I wore at Dynamite. It is one of 5 Spring Stampede events. It is the first Spring Stampede event, Spring Stampede 1994, April 17th, 1994, as a matter of fact, Rosemont Horizon, Rosemont, Illinois. This show is very interesting for a couple of reasons. We are a month removed from Slamboree in May of 94, when it is really heavily rumored that Hulk Hogan is coming to WCW. And then days later, in June is where it was kind of announced, and then they did the ticker tape parade for Hulk Hogan, and then July is the next pay-per-view, Bash at the Beach, and the rest is history. It was Hogan Flair in Orlando at Bash at the Beach 94, one of the biggest pay-per-views in WCW history. So this is like the last true WCW pay-per-view without any Hogan like in the air. Like, I know Slamboree 94 didn't have Hogan, and Slamboree 94 has some great matches as well with Sting, Vader, Cactus, and Kevin Sullivan versus the Nasty Boys, with Dave Schultz as the one of the Broad Street Bullies, and it was a Broad Street Bully match as the special guest referee. Great match, fun match. Slamboree 94 is a good show. a match you got to go out of your way to see is Terry Funk versus Tully Blanchard in like a Legends match. Bobby Heenan and Gordon Solie are on commentary, and this is 94, so this is like the tail end of Gordon Solie's commentary. So he gets to commentate this match for the Legends reunion Slamboree thing, and it's Terry Funk and Tully Blanchard. It's a brawl. It's so much fun. It's in Philly. It's a great time. Let me get out of that pay-per-view. Let's go back to Spring Stampede 94 for a sec. So this is that last, I call true pay-per-view without any Hogan feeling whatsoever. And they went out and killed it. You have an interesting opener, Johnny B. Bad and DDP. You get Brian Pillman versus Steven Regal. But then you get into the heavy hitters. You get the Nasty Boys versus Cactus Jack and Max Payne. Chicago Street Fight for the tag titles. This is one of the best matches I think I've ever seen from Cactus Jack. People talk Royal Rumble 2000. People talk the Hell in a Cell and Backlash 04 with Orton and, you know, all these moments. But this Chicago Street Fight, it's barely 9 minutes, if that, and it is a absolute war. Go out of your way to see that. But you should watch this whole pay-per-view. Following that, you get Steve Austin and the Great Muta for the U.S. title. You get Sting and Rick Rude, who are always great dance partners in there for the International World title. And then the last 3 matches are killer. Bunkhouse Buck versus Dustin Rhodes in a bunkhouse match where they just beat the tar out of each other. Vader versus the Boss, formerly Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor, Guardian Angel, whatever you want to call him, in a crazy good Hoss fight. I love Hoss fights. As we close out the juice box today with my Dynamite experience, probably the best moment-ish of the night was a Hoss fight. So we'll delve into that. And then, of course, the main event of this Spring Stampede 94 was Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat for the WCW World title. And it is a classic. It's 5 years after they had their trilogy of matches, which set the wrestling world on fire in 1989. And this is them. 5 years later, more refined. Flair and Steamboat are both faces here. It's an interesting dynamic. Like I said, this whole pay-per-view has an interesting dynamic of being that just before Hogan kind of doesn't ruin everything, but it's that last piece of WCW before we really kicked it up a notch. Yet this show is a really strong show for not having Hogan. Early 94, the beginning of 94 before Hogan is a great little run of shows between Super Brawl, Spring Stampede, and Slamboree. All pay-per-views starting with S. That's interesting. But yeah, that is my vintage pay-per-view recommendation for this week. I will also like to transition into, it is that time of the year, April, and it is some Spring Stampede memories. I'm going to give you my top 5 Spring Stampede matches. 2 of them are on this list from 94, which are Steamboat and Flair, and Max Payne and Cactus Jack versus the Nasty Boys. But the 3 other matches I would recommend to watch for Spring Stampede, if you want to tune into 97, you get DDP versus Randy Savage in the main event. No disqualification match that really put DDP on the map for the pay-per-view sense. Great match, great feud that year because they had another one at Great American Bash, and then a final match, the Vegas Death Match at Halloween Havoc 97. Spring Stampede 98, Raven's Rules, DDP versus Raven. Great match. All over the arena they go. And then 99, Spring Stampede 99, which arguably is one of the last great WCW pay-per-views, top to bottom. The opening match, Juventud Guerrera versus Blitzkrieg? People say, who the hell is Blitzkrieg? I've never heard of this guy. Well, that's because his run as like wrestler in general is very, very interesting and quick. This guy began his career in 94 and was just kind of indie wrestler in Southern California, and then transitioned into becoming a WCW wrestler in '98. And he was on, I think they did a lucha like special show. It's kind of similar to that When Worlds Collide pay-per-view in '94, but this is just like a straight up lucha special. And he was in a couple of those matches. Then he debuted on TV against Rey Mysterio in February. He has this opening match on Spring Stampede for the number one contendership for the Cruiserweight title. And then that's it. He has some TV matches, some Thunder matches, and that's it. He retires in 1999, which is wild. Like, he retires 6 months after this match. If you watch this match, and it wasn't because he was like old or anything. He was like 24, 25 years old when this Spring Stampede match happens, and by the end of the year, he retires. But he's an unbelievably talented wrestler in luchador, and I can't wait to now transition into this segment. So now we're going to go into AEW Dynamite, Peterson Event Center. Great atmosphere. A lot of terrible towels getting ready to be waved, and we're waved for Britt Baker, DMD. She had a great showing. They had a great little angle as well. We'll get into that. But I bring up Blitzkrieg from the last segment and tie it into a wrestler on this show, this Dynamite show, Commander, who I have a lot of similarities between Commander and Blitzkrieg with their athleticism, with their look, and just how they present themselves in the ring. And boy, Commander did not disappoint. He went against Jay White. Some guys have an issue with, they're all spot monkeys. There's no selling. Every move means less and less. Nothing matters, all these things. Yet, in this particular match between Commander and Jay White, where it's clear that, Jay White was going to win this match, but Commander was setting up his, big top rope springboard moves throughout the match, getting cut off before he could, hit one or hit another one, or, getting cut off at certain points, never really getting that move off until the end. And when he did, whoo, it was spectacular. And I got some of the clips from my vantage point on my Twitter, @JuicySteen, if you want to see Commander doing some insane flips to Jay White. But it was a hell of a match, hell of a performance. And like I said, he really, Commander that is, reminds me a lot of Blitzkrieg. Hopefully his career lasts longer than just this year. But man, what a match. It was great to see Jay White live in person. This is his first AEW match as an AEW wrestler. And now it also revealed that Commander is all elite. So people will start saying there's too many guys, sign more guys, blah, 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 blah. But if you're going to do another show, yes, people are going to be critical that there's another 2-hour show of AEW programming. However, if you have too much talent as is with just 3 hours, maybe it's worth having that other show, and now you can spread it out, which again, I like that if that's what they do. If they just have the same guys on every single show, every single week, it's going to get annoying, it's going to get stale, it's going to get repetitive, it's going to become WWE. But if they spread out the rosters for Rampage, Dynamite, and Collision, I think they have a shot to really kind of broaden their audience and put more effort and more product out there that people can watch or relate to, or see on Saturday night, because Saturday nights are a good time to watch wrestling. Other stuff that happened here, Dynamite, we had the opening promo with Jungle Boy, Darby, and Sammy. MJF, of course, got in the way of that. There's going to be a Pillars tournament where Darby Allin gets the bye. would face the winner of Guevara and Jack Perry. And of course, it was Sammy Guevara winning that match while Darby looked down rather, from up in the rafters. And it seems that there's some sort of a partnership between MJF and Sammy, one paying the other one off to help get some of the other talent out of there, so that it's just Sammy and MJF at the pay-per-view at Double or Nothing, when MJF initially was going to have all three of those guys go for the title in a fatal 4-way, 4 corners, 4 pillars match. But MJF seems to want to pay that off for Sammy to make it a one-on-one, but I have a feeling it's either going to blow up in their face or Sammy's going to turn on MJF. But I think they're going to end up booking the 4-way when it's all said and done, and we're going to get a hell of a match at the pay-per-view. Of course, Britt Baker, DMD, hometown girl, teamed with Jamie Hayter to face Soho and Storm. Fun match, good heat. Everybody was really, really hyped to see Britt, and it was kind of interesting. Hayter took a bump on the steel stairs, and they kind of hurried and rushed the match and competitors to the back after the match quicker than normal, with no real post-match celebration. Potentially she hurt. We don't really know. It seemed kind of rushed. But again, all just kind of speculation and hearsay. Hopefully she is not injured. But we'll update as we get further into the news next week. But yeah, great. Man, Terrible Towels were in full force. Speaking of Terrible Towels, we had the Acclaimed come out. They did a great rap. Max Caster killed it again, as he always does, referencing Draymond Green, Jericho's penis, Bud Light, and Terrible Towels, all within 4 bars. He's a hell of a performer. And Billy Gunn is absolute, behemoth now. I don't know how. Let's do a little quick research here. Billy Gunn is 50. Billy Gunn turns 60 years old on November 1st, and he looks so jacked. He's in great shape, and man, it was great to see them get to do their thing live. The Acclaimed so hot. They're such a great team. And they got to beat Parker, Hager, and Menard, the JAS B unit, the NWO Jobber Squad, if you will. But it was good to see the Acclaimed. We had the Elite do a little bit of a promo. Great to see them after everything that's been going on with them. If you know me and any amount of my history, I've been a Young Bucks fan for quite some time. I traveled out to California to see them specifically at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in Reseda, California in 2016 because I was like, I need to see the Young Bucks live. I have a ton of Young Bucks merch. I'm just a huge fan of those guys, being backyard wrestlers and just having a dream and stuck with it. And their shtick is great shtick, I think, and it still works now. And I mean, AEW was all this stuff. The Young Bucks are so pivotal and important because in the whole longevity and the history of AEW. So it was cool to see them here again after everything that happened last year with Brawl Out. And then the BCC came out and interrupted them and beat them down. And then Takeshita helped. He helped them out. The odds got even. It looks like we are really on a run to either an 8-man tag or some sort of blood and guts match, maybe. I just like where we're going. I just don't know what we're really gonna see. However, it's really interesting with Don Callis. I think it's way too telegraphed. They were beating down on the Elite, and Don Callis ran down with a chair and got spooked by the BCC, so he drops the chair instead of just running away with the chair, a.k.a. the chair was then able to be used on them, and I honestly just don't trust Don Callis. I don't think he actually got cut in the head. I don't think he wants to actually be with the Elite anymore. I think he's going to turn. I'm not saying we're going to see blood and guts and do a fall brawl turn from Callis, but I do think that the invisible hand is going to become a visible hand in the Blackpool Combat Club. So bookmark that. What else we got here? Oh, yeah, of course. 2 other little things from the show. We had just a wild but wildly entertaining segment between Adam Cole and Chris Jericho, who had never really shared the ring before. And there was some respect was there from Cole to Jericho, but Jericho did not reciprocate that. And then, wow. Beat up on Adam Cole, handcuffed him to the ropes. Britt Baker came down to make the save and then got beaten down on her own. And as Adam Cole was handcuffed to the ropes, the Outcast came out and beat down Britt with the kendo stick. Very reminiscent of Sold Out 99, where Hogan had the weight belt and he was whipping David Flair over and over and over again while Ric Flair was handcuffed to the ropes, and Ric Flair was legitimately pissed, heated over that incident. If you watch that pay-per-view, oh my God, the heat from that particular match. Sold Out 99. That's not this week's pay-per-view recommendation, but in regards to this particular angle, it's very, very similar, the parallels between the two, and I was thrilled watching it, and I can't wait to see what we're going to do. I like Jericho and Cole in a match together. However, I also wouldn't hate it if we get a Saraya Jericho versus Britt Adam Cole mixed tag, because I think you can utilize all the talents well. I think you get some interesting interactions, and the dynamics are great with the former WWE guys versus like the AEW couple. You know, I just think it's a great dynamic that they could pull off. So I would enjoy either, or maybe both at some point if they pull off both, a singles match down the line and a mixed tag at some point as well. But I mentioned I love Hoss fights. I love Vader versus the Boss at Spring Stampede 94. And what else I also loved was Powerhouse Hobbs versus Wardlow. Man, unfortunately, another reign ending for Powerhouse Hobbs. This one, 41 days. And now we get Arn Anderson in the corner of Wardlow, which I liked. I really did. I got to see an Arn Anderson DDT live onto QT Marshall, which was so awesome. And I just seeing Wardlow win. I know he's from Cleveland, but he's billed from Pittsburgh. He wrestled at IWC. His former manager was Justin LeBar. So now I've touched on almost every single Chair Shot reality host that I've done work with. Hell, I'll throw in Brian Ghoulish, who is a former Chair Shot host. He didn't show up at Dynamite, but he did show up at one of the early Pirates games this a couple weeks ago, and threw out the first pitch, and it didn't go so well. But we love you, Brian. Chair Shot being covered all throughout this show. You love to hear it. But yeah, Wardlow wins, gets the third TNT title reign for his career. And now it seems that Luchasaurus is going to go and fight Wardlow potentially for the TNT title. Is that going to be another title change? The TNT title is the hardcore title. It's the 24/7 title. It is being passed around like a J on 420, which is when I'm recording this. So happy 420 if you celebrate. I am not celebrating, but some people do. Some people do. Yeah, fun Dynamite. I had a great time at RWA. I'm not going to lie about that. Once again, indie promotions that do it the right way, that are very authentic and feel authentic, are really the best. So great time there. Great time at AEW Dynamite. Like I said, vintage pay-per-view recommendation this week is Spring Stampede 94. I'd also like if you guys could check out that sold-out 99 match. I'd like to actually make sure I have that all correct here. Let's see. I want to say... Let's see. Oh, it was the tag. Yeah. So Barry Windham and Kurt Hennig went against Rick and David Flair in a tag match. And that's where all the shenanigans happened afterwards. But man, it was a really, really crazy storyline. A lot of heat. So I'd say go out and check that out if you can. But yeah, this has been the Juice Box for this week. Not too much inside the ring outside of the stuff that I got to see, but a lot of talk on AEW's new show and CM Punk. I mentioned Money in the Bank stuff. Without really mentioning it, I just will say it now. I think Logan Paul should be in the Money in the Bank match. I don't know if he'll win it, but I think he should at least be in it. That's all I had there. I'm just going through my notes. But yeah, interesting little week. Next week will be very close to... we'll be a week closer to Backlash, which is 2 weeks away from Saturday. So we're looking forward to that. We'll be previewing that. We also got Cody and Brock official for Backlash, so can't wait for that as well. Yeah, this has been the Juice Box. Once again, follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. You can go to juicysteen.podbean.com, Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, iTunes. You can rate and review this show. 5 stars would be absolutely fantastic. And as always, keep on listening. Appreciate the feedback. This has been the Juice Box, and I am Juice Springsteen, and I'll see you guys next week.
That was the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to the Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.